If you believe in evolution, what's sin done to the world? If death has always been here, then death is nothing special, and I believe that Christians who believe in evolution, and I'm not saying they're not Christians, but I believe they should seriously consider the fact that they're really undermining the whole basis of the message of the cross, and that's a very serious thing indeed. And the whole basis of the message of the restoration. What are we going to be restored to? Death and struggle over millions of years? You know, the whole concept of struggle and survival of the fittest and so on is totally opposite to the nature of God anyway. He defined his creation as good. To understand why Jesus died on a cross, we have to go back to the book of Genesis to see where sin came from, where death came from. The whole foundations of the gospel message are there in Genesis. Let's look at another example. Jesus was asked a question concerning divorce that concerned marriage. How did he answer them? They were trying to trick him. He said, haven't you read, he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife, and they'll be one flesh. Where was he quoting from? The book of Genesis. Jesus quoted from Genesis. He quoted from Genesis on many occasions. He took it as literal truth, as historical. In fact, he built these doctrines like marriage upon the literal events of Genesis. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. He wasn't a liar. He wouldn't tell us something that wasn't true. Why did he quote from Genesis? Because the meaning of marriage goes back to the book of Genesis. God took dust and made Adam, took his side and made a woman. You become one when you're married. Why? Because you're one flesh historically. If it's not so historically, it's not so now. The issue of homosexuality, you know, it's such an easy one to solve for Christians. It really is. The issue of homosexuality, it's not a matter of one's opinion. It's a matter of God made marriage, God made man and woman. What does he say? And it really is easy. God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. He made a man and a woman, not a man and a man. He told them to be fruitful and multiply. In fact, we're told in Malachi 2:15, one of the primary importances of marriage is to produce godly offspring. Who'll affect the world for Jesus Christ? Who'll produce godly offspring? Who'll affect the world for Jesus Christ? And so it goes on. You know, it's sad that in our churches there are so many marriage problems, so many family problems amongst our people in our churches. And I believe it's related to two major reasons. One, so many people don't understand what it means that God is creator. He sets the rules. We must submit ourselves totally to him. Nothing is a matter of our opinion. And of course, in many of our schools, often girls are taught, oh, you know, if you do get married, remember, you're an individual. You've got your rights. You know what? When you get married, you're one with your husband, and God has total right over your life anyway. And if you want your marriage to work or your family to work, what we've got to understand is that God made marriage, God made the family unit. Therefore, what does he say are the rules? And what I'd say to you is this, ladies and gentlemen, are you prepared to accept the roles God gave for you regardless of your opinion? And to be honest, I'm not interested in your opinions anyway, because it's not really a matter of your opinion, is it? You understand what I'm saying? For instance, let's take women in marriage. I'll get to the men in a moment. But let's take the women. You know, I know the feminists are out there demanding equality. You know, it's not a matter of equality because men and women are equal. That's what the Bible teaches. It's a matter of roles. God made women, God made men. What are the roles he gave to us? Adam was created first, Eve was deceived, a woman will be in submission to her husband. End of argument, isn't it? A man will be the head of the woman. That's what the Bible teaches. It's not a matter of our opinion, it's a matter of, are we going to accept what God says? He's the creator. What about fathers? It says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. He gave himself for it. Do we love our wives sacrificially like that? Or it tells us in Isaiah 38:19, the fathers to the children shall make known thy truth. Proverbs 1:8, hear the instruction of your father, forsake not the law of your mother. Genesis 18:19, a father complimented for the way he trained his children. Who's to be head of the house? Spiritual head. Fathers. Who in the majority of Christian homes that has the prayer times and Bible readings with the children and brings them up spiritually, mum or dad? And the answer I get everywhere I preach is mum. And you know, that's not right. It doesn't mean mothers shouldn't get involved. But if fathers don't take on that spiritual headship, you often see the sons rebel against Christianity. You often see the daughters who date non-Christian fellas and marry non-Christian husbands and get in a mess. If you don't give them the right foundation, the structure's not going to stand. You know, we want that structure to be transmitted to the next generation, don't we? And if we don't give the foundation for the structure, don't expect the structure to stand. It's like a man who came to me and he said, you know, my sons rebelled against Christianity. They said, why should we obey your rules? You know, he said, I never thought to tell them they weren't my rules. I hadn't ground them in the fact that God was creator and he set the rules. They just saw it as my opinions, and so they decided to have their own. You know, when you think about what we're doing with the next generation, which is going to affect generations to come, think about the Australian Aborigines, for instance, or the American Indians. When they were first discovered, they were an anti-God people that worshipped evil spirits. In Australia, the Australian Aborigines were a Stone Age culture, and yet, you know, their ancestor, if the Bible's right, was Noah, going back to Adam. Their ancestors could make musical instruments, could build boats, knew about God. What happened to them? Well, somewhere in their ancestry, they've rejected God. And how long would it take to produce a so-called primitive race? How long? 1 generation. Take the hippies in Australia that go into the jungles, that have kids and don't teach them about the Bible or technology or medicine, and you'll produce a primitive race in 1 generation. Or take a nation such as America, Australia, other nations in the world, take a nation that brings students through a public education system and doesn't teach them about the Bible or God, and you'll produce a primitive culture in 1 generation. And I believe there's an awesome responsibility on our part, because if we don't give them the right foundation, the structure's not going to stand that should stand. Let's take one other issue, the issue of clothing. I noticed today that, looks like it anyway, you're all wearing clothes. Well, that's great. Why are you wearing clothes? Well, during winter you could say because it's cold. During summer you might say I like to wear clothes when it's hot. You can have all sorts of opinions. But you know, in reality, the reason we wear clothes is because of a moral reason. God gave clothes because of sin. Where do we go to find that? The book of Genesis. What do we find there? When God made Adam and Eve, they were naked. They rebelled against God. As a result of that rebellion, sin came into the world. Sin distorts nakedness. Sin distorts everything. What did God do? He gave them coats. The first blood sacrifices, a covering for their sin. Beautiful picture of something to come, wasn't it? He gave them coats. You know, in the New Testament, it singles men out. If a man lusts after a woman in his heart, the Bible teaches us he commits adultery in his heart. Why single men out? Well, if you're a man, you know, don't you, fellas? Because men respond to a woman's body sexually very, very, very easily, don't they? Yes, some are looking at me, some are staring, some are looking down. Yes. You know, I said that at a minister's conference once, and one young minister jumped up and said, "Amen." I had to have a little talk to him later. But men were created that way, and it was to be in a response to one woman in a perfect relationship, their wife. But now sin distorts that, and fellas have a problem called lust. By the way, fathers, have you told your daughters what men are like? Because if you don't tell them, they won't know. And they need to be told that what they wear or don't wear can easily put a stumbling block in the man's way and cause him to commit adultery in his heart. And it's not a matter of the fashions of the day, and it's not a matter of fighting with them. You know at home how it goes? You're not going to wear that, daughter, why not? It's not right, why isn't it right? You shouldn't wear that, why not? Because it's wrong, why is it wrong? Because Christians don't wear that, why is it wrong? Because you don't wear that, why not? Because you're not going to wear it, why not? Mum and Dad, you're old-fashioned. Mum and Dad, that's your opinion, I got mine. You know, what you should say is, you understand that God is creator. He sets the rules. You know that all of our doctrine goes back to the book of Genesis. You know the meaning of anything's tied up with its origin. You know that Peter teaches us we have to have reasons for what we believe. So it's not a matter of my opinion. It's a matter of let's go back to our absolute authority and see what he says about the origin of clothes, why he gave clothes, what men are like, etc., etc., etc. Now you wear what I tell you to because I'm your parent anyway. And the reason you say that is because it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And that's not a matter of your opinion either, because God tells us. And I hope we get the picture. We should construct a standard of clothing in accord with why clothing was given.